Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to the RuralStrong podcast. This is your host, Joe Barker, and we're coming to you today from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in beautiful downtown Jackson, Tennessee. And I'm excited today. A good friend of mine, Jake Bynum, is our guest, and Jake serves as the Chief of Staff at the University of Tennessee at Martin and the Executive Director of the WestStar Leadership Program. Jake, welcome to RuralStrong.
Thank you, Joe. Glad to be here.
Well, I've been looking forward to this because, number one, I want to bring people up to date on exactly what you do at UT Martin, and certainly we want to talk quite a bit about the WestStar Leadership Program. So, first of all, since we have listeners from all across the country, tell our listeners a little bit about the University of Tennessee at Martin and your role as Chief of Staff.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. I always love to get to talk about UT Martin. So UT Martin is situated in Martin, Tennessee, which is in the northwest part of Tennessee, right along the Kentucky border. I tell people Martin is Weakley County's 2 counties over from the Mississippi River and borders Kentucky. Martin's a 4-year comprehensive regional institution. We run the gamut of all kinds of degree programs, both undergrad and graduate programs. Anything from humanities and fine arts. Agriculture is a large college for us. Then education, health, behavioral sciences, engineering, natural sciences, and then the College of Business as well. And then, like I said, we have graduate programs as well for master's degrees. We are on our way to 10,000 students by the year 2030. We're just right at we'll be right at 7,800 students in the fall semester, which will be our largest enrollment ever. And so excited about that prospect. Not all of those students are located here on campus. We have a varied mix of student population. So that's what I say heads in beds, our residential students, which is somewhere around 4,000 students. And then we have 6 regional centers all located throughout West Tennessee and 1 in Middle Tennessee. So we've got centers in Selmer, Jackson, Ripley, Somerville, Parsons, and Springfield. And then we also do substantial work in dual enrollment as well. We really kind of are one of the leaders across the state related to dual enrollment. And so about 2,100 students in our dual enrollment program. And so that's offering high school students college credit so that whether they land here at Martin or whether they land at another institution, they've got a kind of a foot in the door. Dual enrollment actually is the greatest indicator in student success as opposed to when we think about ACT scores or GPA or class ranking. If a student performs relatively well in 2 dual enrollment courses, that really does set the marker for them to be able to perform at the collegiate level. And so we're doing really extensive work there. And then we also run a pretty expensive online student program. All of our master's degrees are online currently, and then we do nearly everything undergrad online, with the exception of the things that you would think about biology, chemistry, where you have to have labs, but we can do all the kind of core work online. And so we're ultimately really in tune and intentional about student access in our rural communities as well.
Well, you know, the University of Tennessee at Martin certainly has a special place in my heart because I am a graduate of UT Martin. I guess you would call me a slow learner. I graduated from UT Martin 45 years after I started, but I did get the degree, and it's a wonderful place. Jake, as Chief of Staff, what are your duties?
Yeah, that's a great question because every day is a little different, as you would expect. So I serve at the pleasure of the chancellor, and really, when I think about it, operations is kind of the bucket that I kind of put myself in. I'm the guy that hopefully helps to make sure the trains are running on time and they're running in the direction that they're supposed to be running, and so that's good, exciting work. I primarily excuse me. I'm also in charge of strategic initiatives. So we launched a strategic plan last year that'll take us through the year 2030. And so part of my responsibility is checking in with those strategic plan leads, making sure that those initiatives are moving forward. We have 5 goals, 24 strategies, 55 metrics, all related to that strategic plan. And so I'm the guy that gets to just tap people on the shoulder and say, hey, where are we on this? Make sure you get your reporting in on time. And so that's really kind of primarily what my role is when I think about service to the chancellor. And then also helping him, whether that's put out fires or more importantly, if I'm doing my job really well, is avoid those fires starting altogether. And so having my finger on the pulse, but that's on campus and then in our local communities. And we really consider ourselves the institution of higher education in West Tennessee. Like I mentioned, we're in those regional centers. And so our footprint is in local rural communities. And so we're really in tune to what that is. And we want to be a resource for communities and community leaders. And so doing some work around capacity building for local communities is really something else that we've embraced and that I get to help kind of push along.
And I also want to mention that Jake is a former county mayor in Weakley County, Tennessee, and I think did you serve about 10 years or so? Is that about right, Jake?
That is right. So I served almost 10 years. I had 2.5 terms. Was elected 3 times. Loved that work, but also very much excited about this opportunity. So born and raised in Weakley County, never lived anywhere but Weakley County. Came right over here and got my own degree from UT Martin. And then served in a couple of different capacities in the local community until I became mayor. And then the chancellor stole me away from that position and said, hey, I need somebody. Chancellor Freeman grew up in Memphis and then went to University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And that's where he spent 25 years of his career. And so when he became chancellor, while he had a vast understanding of higher education, not as much around the local community. And so he asked me to come over to the team to try and help advise around local communities, local issues. I say oftentimes my job is to get him in the right rooms and sometimes to keep him out of the wrong rooms. And so that the county mayor work was essential in kind of where I am now and the role that I play for the chancellor.
Well, and that's exactly what my next question was going to be, Jake. How did being a local elected official prepare you for your role as chief of staff? Because, as a local elected officials, you deal with citizens, you deal with commissions and all the things that go with it. And then you come into the university system, which has a lot of moving parts to it. So how do you see that your public service background lent to you being successful as chief of staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I often say is so I've always been in the people business. Like I said, I had a career in banking for almost 10 years and then was the county mayor for 10 years. All of that very customer or constituent focused. How do we serve those people? How do you as a leader or as the service provider make sure that you're in tune to the needs and the will of those individuals, especially when you think about elected officials and dealing with constituents, and not everybody wants the same thing every single day. You mentioned county commissions. I had 18 county commissioners. Most of them didn't agree on one single thing every single day. And so getting to deal with those officials was a lot of fun. I think people also forget the fact or don't realize that county mayors, especially in the state of Tennessee, have virtually no actual authority. It is all about influence. And so the sheriff, the county clerk, the register, the trustee don't answer to the county mayor. And so it really is about understanding what those relationships and that dynamic feels like inside a courthouse or inside a county. And so that was a really great training ground for me, given the fact that I actually have no authority here at UT Martin either. They just let me kind of go around and point at things, but I deal with a lot of great individuals. And so a really good training ground. When I think about constituent relations, that's very similar to the things that we think about when we think about students and the services that we provide those students, or when we think about parents. I've often said I made a really dumb decision one time, Joe. I decided I'd be the commissioner of the Dresden Youth League baseball.
Bad decision. Bad decision.
Terrible. And I said, I have decided to go in there and make people mad about their kids. And then I worked at a bank, so I got to make people mad about their money. And I can't think of two worse things to make people mad about. So when you think about parents who have sent their son or daughter off to, this great new open world, but they still very much want to be in tune to the things that are happening. And sometimes we have to look at people and say, we can't help you in that way, but let us figure out how to serve you in a way that we think will best benefit you. And so those two things marrying together with that service as county mayor has been really beneficial. And then I will say UT Martin, I'm like you, Joe, I mentioned I was a graduate of UT Martin. I got a degree in business administration with a focus in marketing. And I've said I've been in the marketing business my entire life. So whether that was the bank, or whether that was county mayor, or now whether that is my service at UT Martin, it's all about a brand, whether that's a personal brand or whether it's the brand of the institution that you work for. Those things are really important to people. They're important for us from a reputation standpoint. And so having that foundation has been really important as well.
And before we transition, Jake, into talking about the WestStar Leadership Program, there is a program at UT Martin that probably a lot of people would not associate with a university in Tennessee, and that's the rodeo program at UT Martin, and it has been highly successful and recognized across the country.
You are exactly right. In 2004, I think it's 2014, we had a national championship team. We've had some phenomenal athletes come out of our rodeo program, who have gone on to do great things in both the amateur and the professional world. Rodeo is really one of the most exciting times on campus. The rodeo is typically somewhere around the third week of April, depending on kind of how Easter falls, but always in the month of April. That brings in thousands of visitors to UT Martin and to the local community. And really one of the few collegiate rodeo teams in the region, and so doing really exciting things. And you're right, one of our claims to fame, especially as we think about student athletes.
All right, let's talk about leadership. Something I love to talk about. I know you do, and tell our listeners, what is the WestStar Leadership Program, if you had the elevator speech to describe it?
Sure. WestStar Leadership is a regional leadership program for community leaders in the 21 counties represented in West Tennessee. And so Lake all the way down to Shelby and all the way over to the river and back up again. We are doing work related to leadership development and leadership progression for those community leaders. So I often say it is not your local leadership program is it's something different than that. We're trying to equip local leaders with the skills and the resources that they need to go out, and whether that's serving in a current capacity or serving in a future capacity for their communities. In addition to our just regular signature program that has about 35 individuals from West Tennessee, we also run a teacher leadership program called West Teach. And so that takes in classroom teachers from all over the region. And then we run several conferences throughout the year: the Evelyn C. Robertson Conference on Excellence, the Elevate Conference, which is a traditional leadership conference, Rising Star, which is a rising eighth grader conference for students, and then Future Star, which is a rising senior conference for high school students. And so doing a lot of good work related to leadership development and trying to really step into the needs of communities and answer the questions that are out there that are challenging those local leaders.
Well, I'm always excited to talk about WestStar. I graduated from the WestStar Leadership Program 25 plus years ago. So how many alumni are out there, Jake, that have come through the WestStar program?
So at the day of this recording, Joe, we will tomorrow graduate the 1,147th graduate, I think, tomorrow night. And so just a little over 1,000 graduates. And so really exciting work for 36 years. Tomorrow will be our 36th class of WestStar Leadership. And really and truly, we have seen some phenomenal individuals come out of that program. Both, and I don't want to focus in too much, because I do think that every single leader that we've graduated through the program in the 36 years has benefited their community, has gone out and done good work. But we also have some kind of claim to fames. So federal Judge Mark Norris, who was appointed by President Trump in his first term, was a WestStar graduate. We've had several legislators that weren't legislators when they started, but have now gone on to serve local communities, former mayors, CEOs, executives, Tina Prescott, who runs the local hospital here, Lisa Piercy, who was the Commissioner of Health, a WestStar graduate, Jay Templeton, Commissioner of Ag, former WestStar graduate, and countless others, city mayors, county mayors, other elected officials. But really and truly, one of the things that we love is when we see those individuals that are doing just the everyday work, regardless of where they are, where they sit, and wanting to make their community better. And so super excited about the work that we get to continue to do with those individuals.
Jake, why is leadership so important in the success or failure of our communities?
Yeah, I would love to say that I have got the magic sauce to what can make a community stronger and better as it relates to local leadership. What I know as a student of leadership is that that leadership capacity in a local community is so incredibly vital for the success. Somebody being able to look at a problem in their local community, identify that problem, and then say, these are the steps that we've got to take in order to fix that problem. We've done some really intentional work, especially in the last year, around looking at case studies related to the communities that we visit, where we really go into those communities and say, okay, what challenge do you have? And then we create a case study related to that challenge. So it's not specifically related to that local community. Because what we also know is in rural, I believe in rural America, but certainly in rural Tennessee, and West Tennessee specifically, the challenges that somebody faces in Obion County is very similar to the challenge that they face in Henderson County. And so how do we look at those problems, and then how do we solve for those problems? What you find most often is that at the core of the issue is related to how we communicate that problem, how we think about how to solve for that problem, and an understanding that maybe the answer doesn't sit inside the local community, that it really is important to go out and also engage with individuals that have either seen that issue before or have a strong knowledge base around what that issue entails. And so we've looked at things like agriculture land loss, which is a pretty big deal in rural West Tennessee. We've looked at public school. We've looked at healthcare and the closure of rural hospitals. We've looked at data centers. That's a really time-sensitive issue currently. And how do we not just solve for those problems, but how do we talk about those things when sometimes that makes us feel uncomfortable, that we fall into the trap certainly in the South around wanting to be nice and wanting to be congenial. And oftentimes that gets us in a situation where then we're unwilling to have some really tough conversations. And so trying to push our graduates through discussion around how we deal with those issues. We also do a pretty extensive work around some book studies now with the class. And so this year our book was The Way of the Shepherd, which is one of my very favorites. And it really talks about how you manage your flock. And that can be individuals that you work with on a daily basis, or that can be citizens that you lead in your local community. And so giving people the knowledge base and the resources to go out and be able to lead their communities.
And I think one of the things that separates WestStar Leadership, Jake, from a lot of leadership programs is promoting a regional approach, because as a former mayor, as I was, many times our rural communities just do not have the financial wherewithal to solve some of the problems that needs to be solved. So how important do you think regionalism is, Jake?
Joe, I think that probably it's the biggest, both the greatest opportunity and the biggest challenge that we see in our rural communities. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we got it all figured out and that we have gone out and changed all the hearts and minds, because what we do know is especially for individuals that either have come into a community and have gotten truly invested, or whether you look at somebody like me who grew up in a community and so has an affinity for my home community. I want Weakley County to be successful. I want Weakley County to win. There were times when I was mayor, I fell into that very same trap. I worked pretty extensively on a rural broadband project where I was saying day in and day out, I want everybody to have access in West Tennessee. I just want to be the first county to give everybody access, and almost got that done. But what we know is that we can't fix these problems ourselves, or that a win in one community is a win in another community, especially when you think about those that are contiguous to each other. We also know that we're doing a ton of individual work in local communities, recruiting industry, creating job opportunities where those jobs are being filled by people that are not living inside of our communities, that they're commuting out. We've got people commuting in, and all of that then creates this much larger conversation around how do we give people and communities the best access and opportunity to success. And I think that really is important when you think about that regionally. How do we do that collectively together with an understanding that we can't all solve the problem individually, but collectively we stand better together.
And I'm sure we've got listeners out there, Jake, that have been involved with local leadership programs, whether it's youth leadership, adult leadership, and they would really like to get involved in a regional leadership program. Maybe you can talk just a minute about the structure of a typical WestStar cohort program.
Yeah, so we operate, like I said, at about 35 individuals now. Now, I will say the university owns that program, and so we've been very intentional the last several years about making sure that there is a connection to the institution as well. And so we've done some work about making sure that we have individuals from the institution that are inside the class or the cohort, and that we also are bringing our resources because, again, I do think we can help solve for some of the biggest issues that sit outside in local communities. And so that's thing number one. I think trying to figure out what that niche in that regional program is, and not everybody has to do it the same. You know, I've been involved in the American Leadership Program group. I've been involved in lots of other leadership programs, Leadership Tennessee, the Delta Leadership Institute, and everybody's got a little bit of a different flavor. One of the things that we're trying to be really intentional about, Joe, is trying to avoid as much what I call leadertainment as possible. We have about 7 sessions every year. We are being very intentional about traveling different places every single year so that we're not always going to the same communities that we always have gone to, that we are giving more access to local communities to our participants, letting them showcase those local communities, but also not letting it be a show and tell when we go into communities, that we want to have conversations about what are your challenges, how do we solve for those issues, what things have you done really well that then a local community leader can go and take back to their home community and replicate. We're in the business of R&D, rip off and duplicate, when we put access for community leaders, and also doing some fun, interesting things, doing factory tours or showcasing some novel thing in a local community. But really and truly, when I think about programming, what we want to do is over the course of about a day and a half, is we want to take our class into communities, show them what's out there, what opportunities can they take back to their local communities, and then how do they then go forward and lead. And so we also do some work around leadership legacy pieces where we bring individuals in from those local communities that just talk about, this is where my leadership's story or my leadership path started. This is kind of where I am today. And this is what you should think about from a leading community kind of standpoint. And so really excited about that work, and think that our participants are getting a lot out of that.
And I think, Jake, one thing that's really important about the WestStar program is you make sure that your WestStar regional leadership program has a link back to those local leadership programs.
Yeah, it's our greatest recruiting ground, really, when we start thinking about who you want to send, so very county based still. So we have affinity alumni groups in each of the counties. That is where we draw our greatest recruitment. We don't require that you have been through the local leadership program, but we do strongly encourage, and it is weighted on an application. And so how do we make sure that now we're transitioning? And that's also why we're intentional about being just a little different than a local program. So having a connection back to the local community, using that as a recruiting ground, but also not saying like, well, this is just a souped up local program. It is something different. It pushes you to the next level, so that then you can go back and utilize those resources back in your local community. But yes, you're right. We're very intentional. So also we're part of and kind of the backbone to an organization called TACKLE, which is the Tennessee Association of Community Leaders. That really is leadership programs from across the state. WestStar is kind of the financial backing or financial backbone of that organization, and also very in tune to the work that's happening in TACKLE across the state of Tennessee, not just in West Tennessee.
All right, last question, my friend. What's the single best piece of leadership advice that you have ever received and that you still lean on today?
That's a great question. Um, the I had a supervisor at one time. My very first boss and my very first real job at the bank told me one time, if you're as good as you think you are, you won't have to tell people; they'll already know it. And that was a hard lesson for me. I for years referred to myself as a shameless self promoter, and she gave me that advice one time, and I have tried to really carry that through in the fact of, what I get up and do every single day hopefully speaks for itself. That I don't have to go out there and talk about all the great things that I did or all these great initiatives or great ideas that I've had. That if I go to work every single day and just do the work, that the work speaks for itself, and I don't need to kind of tell people how great I am. And that's a lesson that we really are trying to also give our participants in WestStar. That's a lesson I talk about oftentimes in front of student groups is really and truly, like, to do good work is reward in itself, and that you don't have to go out there and tell people how awesome or great you are, because they're already going to know that. People pick up on those things, and I sort of feel that way about the WestStar program. I certainly feel that way about UT Martin. Is we love to tell our story, and we'll tell it anytime. And so we look at opportunities like this, Joe, when friends ask us to come and tell that story, we will absolutely tell that story. But we also know that we don't have to be truly out there beating the bushes, because if we're doing the work that we say that we are committed to, whether that's rural leadership or whether that's rural access to education, we know that people will hear that, they'll know it, and they will come to us and want to participate in that because they'll believe in the mission of it.
Outstanding. It reminded me of years ago, I was trying to get a program off the ground, and as you say, I was out trying to sell it, and I had a critic of the program tell me, "Joe, you're nothing but a salesman." And I looked back at him and I said, in our line of business, you better be a salesman. And so Jake Bynum does a great job. Jake, if we've got somebody listening out there that's just wants to get more information about, well, it could be UT Martin or the WestStar Leadership Program, how can they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, if you just want information about UT Martin, you can go to utm.edu. If you want to have more information about WestStar Leadership, you can go to that same website and then search for WestStar, or you can just Google search WestStar. But if you want to contact me individually, I'd love to talk to anybody about anything all day long. If there's one thing I know, it's how to talk. And so you can contact me at jbynum@utm.edu. Happy to talk about leadership development, community leadership, community development. All of those things are things that get me up every single day, get me excited about how to go out there and make communities better. It really is kind of the bread and butter. And I think, again, that at the core of UT Martin, we are educating students. That is our mission, is to go out there and educate students. But what I believe is that when they leave here better than they came in. Not just more educated, they leave as a better rounded student and citizen. And therefore, what I know is that when we put those students back out into local communities, they're not just leading in their industry, they're leading in their communities. And so very excited about that work. And so anybody that wants to talk to me, I'd love to talk to you.
Well, congratulations again, Jake. They couldn't have had a better choice as chief of staff and to lead the WestStar Leadership Program. If you want to contact RuralStrong, you can contact us at RuralStrong@gmail.com. Thanks again, Jake Bynum. Have a great week.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it. And follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.